Hi, my name is Angel. Welcome back to my channel. We are nearing the end of the year, and as I get ready to reveal my top books of the year, I also want to talk about my worst books of the year, unfortunately. I don't enjoy being a hater. Sometimes I do, but generally I don't enjoy being a hater. So I just want to put a little disclaimer that any of the books that I talk about, if they are books that you love and you enjoy, then I'm very happy for you. This is not an attack against you or anything like that. These are just out of the 200 plus books that I've read this year, these are the ones that let me down, that were the worst out of them. So I kind of have like two categories. I have like my just lowest rated worst books, and then I have a category for like most disappointing. So although they may not be bad books and I didn't really rate them extremely low, they were not as good as I thought they would be. So we're just gonna start with me. We're gonna start with my absolutely lowest rated books. I had 3 one-star books this year. I rarely ever rate a book 1 star, so that's a lot for me. So the first 2 I want to talk about together because they're both like just very disturbing and messed up fiction. The first one is The End of Alice by A.M. Holmes, and the second one is Cows by Matthew Stokoe. The End of Alice is about a man who is in prison for being a pedophile, and he is conversing with this 19-year-old woman outside of the prison through letters, but she also has like the same pedophile tendencies, and so she is hunting for young boys. This book is very graphic and very, very messed up. The thing that I disliked about it is that I just didn't feel like the story had any point. The author is certainly very, very talented, and I would be interested to check out some of her stuff in the future, but I just didn't enjoy the way that this story was told. I read a lot of messed up things, so I can understand, like, it's not really the content that bothers me. It's just like, if you're gonna write about that type of content in that specific detail, I feel like the story itself has to be a little bit stronger, and I just feel like there wasn't any point to the story. I also kind of felt the same way with Cows by Matthew Stokoe, but this one also, the like graphic content actually kind of did bother me. Literally trigger warning for every single thing imaginable in this book. Like, think of the absolute worst thing that you would hate to read a long description about, and I can guarantee that it's in this book. It has absolutely everything. But once again, with that type of graphic content, you have to have a strong story to go along with it, at least for it to be good, in my opinion. And the story that was being told in Cows just didn't feel worth it. Like, I really did not care about the actual story and the actual plot of the book, and with all of that content on top of it, it was a struggle, and I really disliked it. My last 1 star that I had was Meet Me at the Lake by Carley Fortune, which I was really sad about because I read Every Summer After by Carley Fortune, and I actually gave that 4.5 stars, and I don't read a lot of romance, but that one just made me feel so good and so happy. So I was really disappointed by Meet Me at the Lake. So I will admit that Every Summer After does have its flaws. There is a cheating trope in there, but I don't know. I was there for the drama. I love that one. Meet Me at the Lake, I feel like, is just dumb. This is basically about this girl who reunites with this guy that she spent 1 day with in the past, and apparently it was the most magical and spectacular day of her whole life, and she totally forgot all about her boyfriend that she had for 4 years because she met this one random man in the city one day and spent 1 single day with him and has never stopped thinking about him. So now we're in the future and she sees this guy again and they have to like reconcile their past or something, but like the chemistry, where? The chemistry was non-existent. Like, you have to have a really, 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 really good day with this person to never forget them, especially the fact that you're in a long-term relationship at the point that you meet this person and spend that day with them. It has to be a fantastic day for you to like never forget them. And I just didn't pick up any of that when I was reading, and I started to skim through some points because there was no chemistry there. I didn't really care about their relationship, and I just didn't enjoy this book at all. Also, I apologize if you guys hear a dog barking in the background. I live in an apartment complex, and that is my neighbor's dog, and it does that all day long. Moving on to some books that I rated 2 stars. The first one is Five Little Indians by Michelle Good, which is really funny that this is in my worst books of the year because the video I read it in was reading the highest rated book on my Goodreads TBR, which was this one, and I gave it 2 stars. Really, my main problem with this is the writing. The writing was absolutely horrible, and the way that the story was told was absolutely horrible. Like, very important moments would happen, and then it would just like jump timelines, and we would like go into the future, and it was losing me. And yeah, really just the writing about this one. It does tell an important story about Native American people I believe it takes place in Canada, and why can't I think of the name of them? Residential schools. That is what they're called, where they took Native American indigenous children away from their families and put them in these schools. Okay, my phone decided to cut me off because it said I didn't have enough storage, even though that is a lie. Anyways, yeah, what was I saying? They took children, put them in residential schools, absolutely abused them, treated them very, very awfully. And that is the story in this book, and it's told through different characters. But like I said, it's not so much the content of it. It is very much so an important topic and an important subject to bring light to and talk about. But I don't think the writing and the way that this book was done good at all. If you want to know more of my in-depth thoughts, you can go and watch that vlog, reading the highest and lowest rated book on my Goodreads. But that was that one. The next few I read at the beginning of the year, and I was like looking through to compile this list, and I remember being like, oh my god, that was this year that I read that book, because it just feels like so long ago. But we have another very disturbing one, The Wasp Factory by Ian Banks. While this book was certainly very disturbing, as it does promise, there was nothing else going for it. It was boring. Like, yawning put me to sleep. I hated this book. Like, I think about this book now and I'm like, I hate it. It's so pretentious. I feel like that's the right word, where it's like trying really, really hard to be like edgy and, you know, but it's just not. So I think this book was written in the 80s, so maybe in the 80s it would have been a lot more like groundbreaking and astounding, but like, this book follows a little boy who is essentially a psychopath and has murdered people and likes to torture and kill animals for absolutely no reason. And it's boring as hell. And the whole entire like big plot reveal or whatever that is, that's supposed to be so shocking. Like I said, maybe in the 80s it was shocking, but today it's just dumb. So if you don't want spoilers for this, then maybe skip ahead. I'll put a little thing, but basically, the whole time we're reading, we think this is a little boy who was attacked by a dog and had his male genitalia bitten off by the dog, and his father keeps it in a jar in his room. Don't ask why. Don't ask. And then at the end of the book, he finds this and takes his little genitalia out of this jar, and finds out that it's molded from clay, and his father has been giving him hormone injections, so he's not actually a boy, it's a little girl, and that's it. That's like the whole big shocking reveal. But like I said, it's just dumb. I don't know, in my opinion it's dumb, and it's very much like trying to be like deep and metaphorical and like all this stuff, and it's really, it just doesn't, it comes off so pretentious and just not good, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. Next, which is another one that I'm like, I read that this year. In the year of 2023, I read Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. What was I thinking? We're not gonna get into a whole big Colleen Hoover debate in this video, But this book is absolute garbage. I think I have it rated as 2 stars on Goodreads, and I honestly feel like I should change that to 1 star. This is a romance book. However, the male love interest has so many red flags that I absolutely was not rooting for their relationship at all. There is also a lot of weird conversation in here about circumcision and having a newborn child and saying that they have to circumcise him or else he's gonna grow up and get made fun of, which is just extremely problematic in itself. And then they also have that whole, we all know the meme where they literally talk about their son's balls, their newborn baby. They talk about his balls. And they're literally laughing, we laugh at our son's big balls, and then they get hit and die. Which maybe I should say, spoiler alert, but don't read this book. Don't read it. I have no words. The fact that there are people in the world that give this book 4 or 5 stars. Did we read the same thing? Because what? Why, if I'm reading a romance book, why do I care if their child is circumcised or not? And then to bring in such problematic statements about the act of circumcision? I don't know. Moving on. We're gonna stop talking about that one now. Next is Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Khaw. I'm gonna be honest with you. I just like this book so much that I absolutely have wiped it from my memory. I don't remember anything that happened in it. I know it's this group of friends, and I think one of them's getting married in this big mansion or something, and they go, but then there's a ghost or something. But it is so extremely overwritten that it's really, really hard to actually follow what the hell is going on the whole time. You don't care really about any of the characters. It's hard to connect to any of the characters, and then it's just hard to, like I said, keep track of the plot because of the way that it's written. And I genuinely don't remember a single thing that happened in this book. Next is Zombie by Joyce Carol Oates, which is another one of those very much dark and disturbing novels that I feel just was boring, extremely boring, which is really crazy when you are reading about such violent things in this one, and just the Wasp Factory. You are reading very, very violent and graphic descriptions of murder and sexual violence and things like that. But to be reading that and be bored still is appalling to me. And that's why this one got a low rating. Next, we have another romance, The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. Christina Lauren has been very hit or miss for me with their books. I'm still kind of experimenting with the whole romance genre. This one I was really excited for. I really thought I was gonna love it. I read this towards the beginning of the year, sort of in a vlog where I read romance for a week. And this one was the one that I thought was going to be the winner for me, and it actually ended up being the worst one of that video. The main problem I had with this one is that it felt like they absolutely had zero chemistry, and it also is supposed to start off with them being rivals, absolutely hating each other, which they did at first, and then all of a sudden they loved each other. There was never any tension between the two or overcoming their hatred for one another. It was I hate him so much, he's so mean, and then they're forced to go into a room together for half an hour, and then she's oh my god, I love him so much. Girl. Yeah, I felt they had zero chemistry. I was not rooting for their relationship at all. I enjoyed the side characters way more than I enjoyed the main characters, and therefore when the next book came out, The True Love Experiment, that focused on one of the side characters, I really enjoyed that one and I gave that 4 stars, which is not the point of this video at all, but I didn't like that one. And last but not least, for my lowest rated ones, we have The Chateau by Jacqueline Goldis. This is a thriller about this group of childhood friends that go to this chateau where one of them's grandmother lives, and she ends up dead, and they have to figure out who did it. And they all kind of have different secrets and motivations for being there in the first place, and different relationships with this woman. However, this book goes so over the top. It brings in so many different elements that it just was too much. First of all, the characters, I didn't really connect with any of them. I didn't really like any of them that much, and so I didn't really care to read about what was happening. The grandmother who ends up dead, you don't really get a chance to connect with her either, so it's not really like you care that she's dead. And like I said, there are so many different plot points thrown in here that it just is kind of messy and confusing, and it makes it really hard to connect with the main story because there's so much other little things going on, and I just didn't vibe with this one. Couldn't do it. So those were my worst books by rating. Now we're gonna move on to, my hand is stuck in my hair. We're gonna move on to like worst books based off of like most disappointing. So books that I was extremely excited to read and apparently set my bar way too high because when I read the book, it just let me down. So the first one is I Love You But I've Chosen Darkness by Claire Vaye Watkins, which I was absolutely fascinated. I was so excited to read this one. The title and the cover had me hooked. The first chapter had me hooked as well. It was about this woman who is like having a hard time. She's a new mother and things get a little bit weird, and I was fascinated. And then we jump into this long chapter about her father in the 70s and working for Charles Manson, and in between there are all these letters that her mother has written in the 70s to her friend, and it's just like very, very confusing. It's also what is it called, autobiographical fiction, so it's like the main character is Claire Watkins and some of the stuff about her parents is true, but then a lot of it is thrown in there as fiction, and it's basically just like this woman who abandons her husband and newborn baby to go and like find herself. And I don't know, I just didn't really enjoy it. I feel like the only reason I gave this 2 stars instead of 1 stars is I feel like deep inside of this book somewhere there is a good novel, but I just struggled to find it. I was not the one that could find the good book in this. So if you read it and you love it, I'm very, very happy for you, but I'm really sad for myself because I didn't enjoy it. Next is a more recent read. This is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I read this in my fantasy vlog, trying fantasy out for the first time, and I had really, really high hopes for this one. Although I had never read fantasy before, I thought I was really going to enjoy it because I see so much hype and I know that it's such a well-loved book and series, and it just really let me down. I despise the main character, the main female character that we're supposed to care about and root for. The story, I feel like, was so disjointed, and once again there were so many different things happening that it just lost me, and I just didn't really have fun with it. I did enjoy the general like fairy tale vibe and like aesthetic of the book, so I am actually planning to read the second one pretty soon. You know, sometimes you can do a series and the first book you dislike and then the second book kind of brings you back a little bit, so I'm hoping that'll happen for me, but this one was a huge letdown because I thought I was really, really gonna love it and I was so excited to read it. Next is Girls Like Girls by Hayley Kiyoko. As a little 15-year-old high schooler who is like questioning her sexuality, I was absolutely obsessed with the Girls Like Girls song and the music video. It was an iconic moment and I used to watch those all the time. So when I heard that Hayley Kiyoko was writing a book based off of the music video and the relationship with the 2 girls, I was so excited. And then I was so thoroughly let down when I actually read it. So I try not to be so harsh because I know Hayley Kiyoko is not an author first and foremost. Like, she is a musician. That is what she does best. But I feel like the writing just was not great. It was very, very like amateur. Like, you can definitely tell that it was written by somebody who's never written a book before. The relationship in the story I found messy and confusing and I didn't really enjoy. We have this one girl who is in high school who just moves to this new town, and she moves in with her dad, who she doesn't have a really good relationship with, and she meets this group of friends and develops a romantic relationship with one of the girls. But it just, she was so infatuated with her from the first second of their meeting that it seemed very unrealistic because she is supposed to be this character that is questioning her sexuality and coming to terms with the fact that she is attracted to women. So the fact that she was just so like completely enamored from the first sight and never once questioned it, like I just had a hard time because I was expecting it to be more of like a coming of age, like why do I feel this way for my best friend, and get some of those moments, and we really didn't. They also went through a lot of phases in their relationship where they like disliked each other, but then they were like fine 2 seconds later, and it was just a mess, and I just really did not like it. Next is Mayfly by CJ Lead. This one I was really excited for. This is supposed to be like a female American Psycho, and once again falls into that category of extremely disturbing books that have nothing going for them except being disturbing. I was bored to tears by this book. The only redeeming factor is probably the last maybe 20% where it actually gets a little bit unhinged and gory and crazy and violent and graphic, and I really loved that. Pretty much everything before that, what happened? I have no idea. I was bored to death. The next one is another romance, another Christina Lauren one, Love and Other Words. This one I have a hard time talking about why I disliked it so much without giving away spoilers. I literally can't tell you why I didn't like it without spoiling the book. So this is going to be a spoiler warning. If you don't want any spoilers for this book at all, go ahead and move on. On Goodreads, I have this book rated 3.5 stars, which I was kind of surprised by because I thought that I had rated it lower, and when I think about it in my head, it seems like it should have a lower rating. I really enjoyed probably 80% of this book, the relationship and the like childhood friends and drama and things like that. However, the big plot point, the big drama that like ended their relationship so long ago. How do I explain this? The male main character literally is assaulted. Like, he is so drunk that he doesn't know what's going on or who he's with, and this other lady comes and has intercourse with him, and the girlfriend finds them the next morning like naked and passed out in bed together and never speaks to him again until later when they're reconciling their relationship. But the way that it's handled in the book, it's never addressed that he was completely drunk and that he was not conscious or present or aware of what was going on, and yet we are still just to think, oh, he's the one to blame. And even like the female main character, I don't remember their names, but she even like after he explains what had happened, she still sees it as him cheating and like him betraying her, and that just really bothers me because they could have used that same concept and taken a moment to say, you know, this is assault and this does happen to men, and, you know, like taken some time to have him work through it and process it, because he still talks about how he's like very negatively mentally affected by this thing that happened, and yet the way that it's talked about in the book is that, oh, he cheated and it's his fault, and I really dislike that. So yeah, like I said, that literally spoils the entire book, but that was my problem with that one. Okay, I've only got 3 more to talk about because I feel like I've been talking for forever. The next one is Monstrillo by Gerardo Samano Cordova. I hope I pronounced that correctly. This one, once again, not a bad book at all, but I was so ready to give it 5 stars. I thought it was going to be absolute favorite 5-star book. However, I feel like a lot of the middle of the story lost me. This is basically about a woman whose son has died, so she takes a piece of his lung and it grows into this creature, and it's very much like a grief-centered horror, but it is told in 4 different perspectives. So the first perspective, we get the mother as she is going through this and kind of takes that lung and like grows this creature, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it had a fantastic and strong beginning. It was the middle 2 chapters where we are following different perspectives that kind of lost me because there was a lot of time jumps, and I just had a lot of like a hard time just keeping track of whose point of view I was in because it kind of felt very similarly written to the other ones. And then we get to the last point of view, which is from this creature who has grown up now. And I thought the end of the book was fantastic. Like, very strong beginning, very strong end. I think the end did absolutely everything that it needed to and was the perfect ending for this book. It was just the middle for me that I really did not enjoy. So I gave this one 3 stars overall, but in terms of like my excitement going into it and then the way that I felt coming out of it were very different things, and that's why it's in this list of most disappointing. Next is Death in Our Hands by Ottessa Moshfegh. This is the first time I've ever read from Ottessa Moshfegh, although I've heard very, very good things about her all over the internet. This book is about this older woman who kind of starts to become obsessed with the idea that she is like, how do I explain this? Like, she finds this weird note in the woods and she thinks that it's like from a murderer, so she has to figure out who that person is. So she like creates this list of like suspects and just goes on this kind of like obsessive journey looking into this, and is very like stream of consciousness written, and I just didn't really enjoy the way that it was written, and it just, I don't know, it was entirely different than what I was expecting, but I think I would still give Ottessa Moshfegh a chance in the future and read some of her other books, but this one unfortunately just didn't work for me, but I'm very happy for all the people that do love it, because there is a lot, and that's why this is a most disappointing one, because I thought it was going to be a lot better than it was. And this last one is once again a very highly rated and very highly loved book, and that is The Between by Tananarive Due. This one had been on my TBR for a very, very long time before I finally got to reading it. And my big thing with this book is how slowly it progresses. And another thing is the extended dream sequences, which is just kind of a personal opinion of mine where I just don't like reading dream sequences, especially when they're that long. So a lot of this book I just wasn't really invested because I had a hard time like getting into it and reading through these dreams and things like that, and the whole progression was very, very slow, although it is very deep and emotional and talks about a lot of important things. And I thought the like overall concept of it, of what is actually going on in this book, was absolutely fascinating, and I really love the idea of it and the concept of it, but I just didn't enjoy the way this one was executed, I suppose. But yeah, most disappointing because it is so highly loved and highly rated, and I thought I was gonna love it as well, and unfortunately I was in the minority with that one. Anyway, I feel like I just talked forever, but those were my most disappointing and also my lowest rated worst books of the year. However, when you compare how many of those I have to the 200 plus books that I read, we really didn't have too many that I absolutely disliked, which I love. I'm very, very excited to let you guys know what my top books for the year are, so definitely stay tuned for that. But with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you guys next time.